Good morning, friends. Good morning, Sangha. Thanks for being here this morning in person, and hopefully the stream will be working with volume today. We just never really know, but we'll keep doing our best to get that figured out. Thanks for being with Journey Home Meditation for the morning sit today. We'll go through a little bit of shared breathing. I have some contemplations on darkness this morning, and then a couple of poems. And I'm happy to be here today. So let's just let ourselves settle into our bodies and let our bodies settle into this space just for a few moments. And start to allow the breath to be the center of your focus. And see what it is that the breath is offering us this morning. I know that it can sound a bit abstract, perhaps, to think about what the breath is offering. But if we can understand that the breath is what's bringing our conscious awareness into our body, and it's with us from the moment we enter into this world, and it's the last thing that we do before we leave our bodies, we can find that the breath is a steadfast and wonderful way to measure our existence. And when I talk about measuring, I don't mean in length of time or in the breadth of our existence, but a way that we sort of measure out our moments, moment by moment. And each breath is an opportunity to come back into the self and pay attention to those more subtle feelings inside of the body. The world is such an enormous place, and our bodies are so relatively small. But inside of that small space, there is the opportunity to exist without separation with everything in existence. And this is one of the results of a meditative practice, is to be able to experience that place where there is no end to who you are and beginning of who you are not. There is just this vast openness, and the breath bringing us into that space is a wonderful gift. It's a wonderful tool. So let's have a few breaths together. We'll invite the bell this morning. And breathing in together through the nose to the bottom of the belly. And release. Feeling for all of those places in our body we might be holding on to tension, where we might have barriers or something there that's asking for our tenderness. And we can tend to that, breathing in. And release. And with this final breath, we can breathe into all of those spaces we'd like to open up. And as we breathe out, just let everything flow. Breathing in. And release. Let's sit with that open space just for a bit. Find that opening. This morning I was riding in the van, in the whatever, the vehicle, whatever it is, with my son, and we were talking about the music of Bright Eyes. And I was recalling how there was a time period for a few years when an album would come out. It was sort of tracking what was happening in my life as well. Coming out of addiction, some of the Fevers and Mirrors and these earlier albums were really steeped in that feeling of desperation. And, but then you can see that Conor Oberst started growing out of those experiences, and he is really a songwriter for our generation. He's really, I find him to be quite phenomenal. But when we get to the album, I'm wide awake, it's morning. This was the time in my life when I was transitioned out of active addiction and into recovery. And the album is quite hopeful. And we were talking about that. And I was listening to it this morning, and he asked me, "Were you listening to Bright Eyes in the shower?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I love this album. For 20 years, it's been one of my favorite albums in the morning because it's just so bright and it's so hopeful and illuminative. It really has this ability to illuminate, and it makes me happy in the morning to hear it." And so we were listening, and we noticed that even in the happiness, there's songs of deep sadness. And one of the lines he said, says he's sitting at the piano and everything is in reverse. The lonely songs make him happy. And I don't remember the exact line right now. I can't place it, but he says, the songs that are lonely make me happy. And so we were talking about that. My son and I were talking about that a bit. And he keeps referencing a yellow bird throughout the album. So we were having a little philosophical wax session on what that could be. And we kind of both settled on, the canary in the coal mine kind of idea. He's talking about going into these dark places and forgetting his yellow bird, or and it just brought me into this place in my mind where I recalled, like, oh yeah, there's some dark places that we have to go into sometimes. For an album like I'm Wide Awake, It's Morning to really make sense, because it was such a departure from his earlier stuff. And this, I understand this metaphor may be getting old and long, but I'm going to keep going. For that album to make sense, you had to have gone through some of the darkness. And so as we're driving and we're listening and we're thinking about this, I was brought to like this feeling in my body of just gratitude to go into those darker places in a safe body. And I think to expect ourselves to go into those dark places without having trust and confidence in our body to keep us safe is maybe a bit haphazard. But whatever it is that brings us there, however we get there, I think it's important that we go. I think it's important that we go into these dark caverns of our own fear and lonesomeness. I love that word, lonesome. He uses that word on the album, and I decided this morning I wanted to use that word in a poem because I just love that word. And because there's something different from lonesome and lonely. There's something different. There's a different feeling. It's almost like the lonesome understands that it's not always alone. It's just lonesome for the moment. I'm in this lonesome place that only I can get to. Only I can go here. And that's what those dark caverns inside of us are. We can have the support systems of the people that love us, and that's necessary and deep and strong. But they can't do the work for us. And this is what leads into codependency, is when we expect the ones we love or the ones who love us to be able to carry us into those dark places. And then we don't know how to get in or out without them. But I think it's really important that we understand that it's okay that you have to go there alone. And then you can understand, like, mourning in a different way. Once you come through that dark place, you can understand the reason the birds sing at first light. Just before the sun's up at all, there's just a glow, and the birds just start erupting into song. And they're calling you back. They're calling us back. They're saying, come back out of that darkness, It's time to grow. And when I learned that seeds sprout in the darkness, but grow in the light, that gave me a whole new understanding of why it is I was there in the first place. I'm going to bring the bell again. In Bell Hooks, we're going to be going through this whole book, 66 different sections, Appalachian Elegy, Poetry in Place. And today I only have a short time to be here this morning, so we're just going to do one of these for today. And we started with number 1 yesterday. It sort of sets the stage for the ceremony, understanding that we are walking on sacred ground. This is the place of our long dead. And Appalachia is the oldest mountain range in the world. We're understanding, geologists are understanding that this is one of the first things to spring up in the landforms of maybe even Pangaea, when everything was maybe one large form, as far as our understanding is. It's not what we know, it's what we understand. And these are some of the oldest places in the world, these rocks that have come out. And a friend of ours, a person we really respect, Byron Ballard, she is a multiple generation Appalachian witch who is very connected to the Appalachian space. And she talks about rocks and gems and minerals that people use in magic, and she uses driveway gravel. She uses gravel from the driveway for her magical practices, and people give her a lot of trouble about that sometimes, about how it's somehow not as sacred as some rare mineral. And she just simply replies, look, this is taken out of the heart of these mountains. This is dragged right out of the middle of the oldest places in the world, and it's crushed up by machines to lay under our feet, and we don't even think twice about it. And that's why I use it, because it is just like me, pulled out of the heart of this mountain. And so she finds the magic of everyday things. And one of the things about Appalachia that's happening right now is mountaintops are being removed, and the mines are there, right? And the history of mining is there, the culture of mining, digging the coal that burns in our hearths. And Appalachia is filled with sorrow because of this. There's a lot of caves. There's a lot of dark places to go into, a lot of these caverns of darkness to go into. So number 2, Bell Hooks, Appalachian Elegy. Such then is beauty. Surrendered against all hope, you are here again. Turning slowly, nature as chameleon, all life change and changing again. Awakening hearts, steady moving from unnamed loss into fierce, deep grief. Can bear all burdens, even the long passage into a shadowy dark where no light enters. When Bell Hooks says in this poem, steady moving from unnamed loss into fierce, deep grief that can bear all burdens. That transition, she says, all life change and changing again, awakening hearts. That awakening heart is naming its loss, from unnamed loss into fierce, deep grief. That fierce, deep grief, that unwillingness to tame itself, to be fully and wonderfully alive in that sorrow and in that, what she describes as the shadowy dark where no light enters. And the change there, the transition is to going from an unnamed loss into that fierce, deep grief, meaning we have to name it. We have to do that. And to name it, we have to know it. You can't name what you don't know. To know someone's name is to know something deeper about them. To call something by its name, by its true name, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, call me by my true name. That is to name our loss. And you can only really name that loss. What is lost isn't necessarily a person or a body or a time or a place. What is lost is something else. And it's inside of those dark, shadowy places. And we have to go in there. And we have to go in there with the light of awareness. Because no light's going to get in otherwise. Right? We're going in there. No other light can get in. We have to be the light. Make of yourself a light, the Buddha said. Remember, Mary Oliver told us that. Reminded us of what that could be, to make of yourself a light. And there was one more poem that came up for me this morning that I think is quite aligned. And this is by a poet by the name of Angela Jackson. Some tea. And Angela Jackson published this poem, Epiphany, in this issue of Poetry Magazine, April 2023. And before I was saying poetry.org for the website, and it's not. It's not poetry.org. And I am blanking right now on what the website is, but it's Poetry Foundation. I believe it might be poetryfoundation.org. But you can find it. Yes, poetryfoundation.org. And it's issue number 110. So poetryfoundation.org/110. And this is Epiphany by Angela Jackson. I've been old. I've been poor. I've been vulnerable. I've been exploited. I've been called an angel. I've studied spiders. I've lingered in love like a hummingbird outside a window. I've likened myself to a pigeon, a dove. I've been duped. I've been brilliant. I've been a genie in a bottle. I've been let out. I've been put back in. I am in the dark. How to get out with love in my mouth. The poet reminds us we are all of these things. We are not this stationary, static identity that we try to hold on to, where we try to keep our human suit straight for each other. We can be all of these things. And when we go into the dark, the question that the poet asks is how to get out with love in my mouth. So I'm really grateful for the dark caverns today where the seeds can sprout and be brought into the light. If you find yourself in a place where you are able to sit and go into those dark places, just try to keep love in your mouth. I think you'd be all right. When I die in this body, Angela knows to bury me and to place a sprouted acorn in my mouth. Something we've talked about, so that this oak tree will take my body. And that's to me like this symbol of having love in my mouth, that promise of growth. That promise of continuing on beyond the form that you are now. Thanks for being here this morning. Is there any questions or commentary on this morning's work?
I've been doing a lot of dancing with the darkness, so it aligns very well.
Been doing a lot of dancing with the darkness? You want to talk about it at all? Not today. Okay. All right, friend. Well, thank you for coming this morning. And thank you for being here this morning. Maybe that's all there is to say is thank you. Hari Om.